you can see there all different kind of fun games, chase and tag and evasion, okay, moving either side, and getting into the habit of an early age of being able to move off their left, move off their right, and they're kind of doing it subconsciously. With their balance, there's so many different fun games that we can do with balance, and they should be incorporated as much as we possibly can. With our coordination, we're looking at our hand-eye coordination, our foot-eye coordination, our hand-foot coordination, and all that can be done with our football. Each child having a football, getting the opportunity to bounce it and progress at their own level. Noel mentioned earlier there about, you know, a group maybe later on that are very competent, and you might be able to move them on a step. I guarantee you, and it's most likely that the group are competent because they had a good setup from a very young age, where they were made aware of the ABCs, their movements, their fundamentals were all put in place, and from that it gave them that foundation that the house could be built on with the skills then. So it's just so important that we get that foundation from a young age right. When we're looking at the skills, okay, I mentioned this last week as well. If we're having a one-on-one or a two-on-two game, or if they are playing that game, what skills do they need to play the game? So they need to be able to kick the ball. They need to be able to catch the ball. They need to be able to they need to be able to do those most definitely. And then we're looking at in between there, the second point there, you might think like that with dribble, but that ball control, that they're able to, when the ball comes towards them, that they're able to bend down, they're able to move it with their feet, okay, and that's all part of improving, getting better at the game as they go on. As we mentioned earlier, we're talking, when we talk about kicking, to encourage as much as possible using both feet. Placing a ball on top of a small cone gives them a great opportunity as well then to use different parts of their feet to kick the ball, okay, whether it be their toe, their instep, and so on. So it gets, as it says there, both the inside and outside of the foot. The solo is mentioned there too as well, and it's just getting that confidence of the ball leaving their hands, hitting their foot, and they're able to catch it again. So that knee tap is a brilliant way of setting that up. The pick up then as well, just on the last point there on the skills, is off the ground. And obviously, look, you will have kids and children in there that will be eager to show off the pickup, and there's no issue with that, no problem with that. But I wouldn't be a stickler of a point. You want them to be able to pick up the ball and move with the ball, and if that's the main point. If we can incorporate as the year goes on the pick up by getting their toe underneath the ball and getting them into the habit to bending at their knees and bending at their hips, well, that's excellent. But from an early age, picking the ball straight off the ground is perfect. Okay. Before I hand you on to Noah now in the next part, just to kind of summarize what I was speaking about there, a couple of main points for me would be encouragement, keeping it as positive as possible, because you want the child to have a great experience in their local GA club, and let the training session for football being the highlight of their week. Gaining help from parents, and I think what's vitally important with that is, especially that the parents are hanging around, they're seeing what you're doing with in the training session, they're willing to give a hand, and you're willing to receive help from them. But also, if they are playing at home or in the lawn, or when they are going down to the local GA field when they're not training, that they're copying and doing similar skills to what you're doing, and not going above what the child is capable of. Having plenty of footballs, as I said, whether they're soft footballs, sponge footballs, whichever they might be, just having loads of them, and that helps you. And that gives you a wide range of fun games that you can use by having loads of footballs and loads of contact. That every child isn't waiting for their go. Every child has a football. That there isn't three waiting for one football. That's when the boredom kicks in. That's where the child just gets sick of football, and it's not a fun experience. And just probably the last point then that I'll make is the organisation of it. Give yourself the training aid of a session plan, that you have something written down, that you know the way you're going to set it up. You have your 5 or 6 different stations, your 5 or 6 different games. You're able to break your group of 20 under 6s into groups of 4 or 5. They're able to rotate, and they're getting loads of opportunities. They're kept busy. We're looking at, it was a question that came up last week, we're looking at that 40 to 45 minute session. They have a short attention span, and let's just try and make it as fun and as possible and as positive as possible in that amount of time. And I suppose Noel kind of touched on it there earlier. It's something that I would encourage in the clubs, and I think it's a great point that if it can be done throughout the year, that maybe having that conversation amongst your coaches, the coach that might have been with the under 6 5 or 6 years ago, having a chat with him, what worked with him or her, and that can work for throughout all the age groups. That there's an open forum between all the coaches in your club, so they are able to exchange ideas and stuff that might help out. Like any of the information you'll get here tonight or get from any of the GDAs, it's probably a lot of the stuff that works for us, and we'll try and encourage you to use them, but they might not work for you. But I suppose that's the joys of the coach. I suppose that's the end of the nursery part. I'm going to hand you on to Noel now. Noel is going to move on to the next age group, and so on from there.
Lovely, David. Thanks for that. We're just going to look now at the under sevens. So when we speak about under sevens, they're just coming out of the nursery. So as you know, the ages have changed this year. So our under sevens are going to be they're going to be taking part in a structured games program. There'll be blitzes that they'll be taking part in, and the importance here is to build on what we've worked on from with the under sixes. So one thing we need to get our players doing is get them comfortable with the ball early, that they're comfortable with the football. And then David mentioned about the ball, having the ball each. Those of you that were tuned into the coaching conference there at the start of the week would have heard Alan Mulhall talking about that they're having that unstructured play at the start of the session, where players can come in, they can pick up a ball, they can practice throwing it and catching it themselves, bouncing it, trying to kick it over the bar, trying to kick it to knock down cones, just allowing them that little bit of free play at the start. So having those extra footballs around, and look, once you have them, you can go into the various we used to call them the pound shops, but they may have the footballs that are slightly cheaper. All you want for the nursery is just to get them into the habit of handling the ball. When we're moving them on to this stage, then that you're starting to refine some of the skills a little bit better. So we're working on the under six stuff. We're making sure that we have fun still is at the centre of it. And now we're taking time to coach the skill to the players. So we're looking at coaching the techniques of the skill, trying to eliminate as many of those indiscrepancies that we have. We mentioned the picking the ball up off the ground. We're introducing the pick up now. We're getting them to put their toe under the ball to bring it into the hand. We're teaching them some of the skills that allow them to play in a game. So you take what skills does a child need to play a game at under 7. So to be able to catch the ball, kick the ball, and maybe hand pass the ball. If a player can successfully do those skills, they'll be able to survive in the game. And then when we're going to the game, it's just playing the game. That's where some of the learning will take place. But we have to manage the games. Our job as a coach is to manage the games. The player has to be involved in the game all the time. So if you have to go down to your training games, you have to play 3 versus 3 or 2 versus 2 to have the players involved. That's fine. That's where the players will learn. They will learn the skills through the teaching points and through the drills that you do and that. But learning how to apply them in a game, they have to be involved in the game. So if you start off a game and a player has a ball, and next one there's 5 or 6 of them around and try to pull the ball out of his arm, look at the size of your match. It's probably too big. There shouldn't be. You will get the beehive effect for a while, but there should not be 5 or 6 players trying to pull the ball out of a player's hand. The game is probably too big there. Again, the point halfway down there about the second last from the bottom of important to remember, they love to show off their skills and need approval. So we would like to see where we develop this practice culture of practicing their skills at home. Well, that will happen by us giving them little tasks, little challenges. So how many solos can you do, or how many times can you bounce the ball one-handed in a row? How many times can you throw the ball up in the air and catch it? If we're giving that to the players to practice at home, they're going to want to come back and show us how to do that. So allow that few minutes at the start of your session to see them doing that. If they say to you, I can throw the ball up and catch it 3 times in a row, brilliant, because they've practiced that, and you must put aside your setting up of your cones to allow the player to show you what they've been practicing at home. Again, the 3 breakdowns of the areas, we're looking at the different movements. So we're looking at running games, tag games, relay games, some jumping, jumping for distance, jumping over hurdles, jumping. If you've ladders, get them to run through ladders. Looking at the animal movements, so moving around in the frog hops, the different animal walks, and you're working on their balance there then as well with that. Then we're going to come on to the kicking. So again, kicking on the ground, getting to work with their left and their right leg. So get on to the habit of kicking off both feet as early as you possibly can. You know, that is very, very important. Getting off the habit of working off both hands as early as you can. Again, first touch, kind of dribbling the ball, catching a low ball, introducing the hand pass, the fist pass, and then again you have an introduction to the solo. The players are going to like the solo. They see it in television, but it's something that they can practice themselves at home then as well. From our catches, increasing the catches. So remember at the start, David mentioned about having the proper footballs. The last thing you want with a nursery and under 7 is a size 5 football that you're taking off the seams before they go up training. The players don't want that. They want to be comfortable on the ball. So you don't want this fear of the ball having because you throw the ball if it's too hard at them. I often at the start with young kids will often let the air out slightly if I'm doing hand passing with them because I don't want them hurting their hands at the start. So just let the air a little bit so they're comfortable striking the ball with their hand. It's only a tiny little thing, but it just makes sure that they're confident to pass. The last thing is the ball too hard to strike it because more often than not they might end up striking with the wrist part of their hand. The technique isn't great. Their hands are small. So if you've got the wrong size football, if it's too hard, it's not enjoyable for them too. We're not getting a success there with that. Again, introducing the pickup, looking at the bounce, using one hand, using both hands, and again, it's just getting them comfortable with the ball. All these skills that we've mentioned here, there's a good lot of the teaching points that Peter would have went through. They're all up on our YouTube page as well. This presentation will be up there in time when we get it sorted out, and we've sorted out the we will send out the booklet to the clubs when we've a few updates to make to it before we forward it out. And again, in the games, introducing the idea of the positions, allow players to play in a variety of positions. And then looking at the small games, 2v2s, 3v3s, you're introducing a small little bit of teamwork here with them. So if you have a 3v3, they're going to have to play the ball to someone else. And again, at game time, I keep mentioning, when we're playing games at time, make sure, watch what's happening at the game. Is every child involved in the game? You know, if someone is standing on the edges, is your game too big that they're not getting involved? And rotate them around them with their positions. As they get a little bit older, you can try the larger games for sometimes, but you may bring it back to small size. But just make sure they're involved, and then you can award some skills for some points for skills. So might apply to an older group. So a player's running through, if he kicks the ball over the bar off his non-dominant leg or his weaker leg, you'll say I'll award you 2 points for that because you want to encourage him to use the other side rather than saying you have to kick the ball over the bar or you have to use the other side. Encourage them to perform the skills. So a hand pass with their hand pass over the bar or kick point with your weaker leg is worth 2. Little things like that just encourage the players to perform the skill rather than us saying you have to do it on this. Okay, so I'll hand you over to Gary and Peter there, who are going to look at starting with the 9s. And if you have any questions, type box there, and we'll deal with them there later on. Sorry, Gary, I was jumping the gun there.
You can hear me fine. Yeah. Look, just firstly, just to touch on a small bit of what Noel said. I'll echo what he said at the start. Just, you know, with a great speaker surrounding Gaelic football in our coaching webinar or our coaching conference, should I say, Alan Mulhall. Look, he was excellent, and I'd really I'd really try and push for you to go and look at it when it's up. And he kind of puts it really simply. There's no rocket science to it. He kind of puts it simply on what we should be doing with our young footballers, our ladies footballers, what should feature in the sessions, and I think he just breaks it down simply, and it would really be worth a look at. So, but just coming back to this, look, David said it already, like our football pathway is going to resemble a lot of what was spoken about on last week's hurling pathway. And look, it kind of should. Look, the movements are the same. Look, the body positions that when the player doing the skills are very similar and they're transferable, but it's also very important that we give both codes their own evening and give our views on the different skill developments and the games program at each age in both hurling and football. So with our under 9 footballers, they're now moving well away from their nursery program, so they're finished that, which is great. And the players will now start their Go Games journey and kind of experiencing a more meaningful and more structured game, which are usually provided by us in coaching and games in the form of our regional cluster blitzes. And look, they're nearly a distant memory now, our regional blitzes on a Friday evening there, you know, in our different divisions, and they were super. And hopefully we get back to them as soon as we can. And like our under 8s, like our games program is going to be an essential part of the child development and their pathway, and this year especially. And we were only on a call this morning actually with the National Games Development Coordinator, Shane Flanagan, and he couldn't stress enough the importance of playing games and getting our Go Games program up and running for this age group, particularly because they've probably lost out on it and some of them could be new to it. So I would urge, and especially in the football context, because unfortunately in Limerick, like the club's participation in the football probably comes second fiddle to hurling. And at times, look, that's fine, but you know, don't neglect the games program for our ladies and our boys in football. Participate to your full capacity and prolong the season as much as we can with games and let them play this year. That would be my big thing this year when I'm going out to clubs, saying to clubs, let them play, give them games, and don't neglect the games that are going to be made available for you, and get them out playing football. Our pathway is a ladder system, and we want our players to keep climbing that ladder, of course, and each grade is almost determines where on the ladder our players are, and it also acts as a guide for us as coaches to know what is really required at each level. So the crucial area of this particular part of the pathway is to not neglect or lose what the player has already learned and has already developed in our nursery program. It all comes back, it's all relevant, it's all really important, and it's about maintaining and enhancing the core sets of movements and skills that the players have already developed. And we don't call them basics, but we refer to them more as essentials, and this is the age group that we really knuckle them down. So the big challenges our young footballers will face in this transitional phase of the sport is the fact that they will now start to experience more contact, obviously. There'll be more applied pressure whilst they have the ball in their hand, which will lead to having to start to perform the skills of the game under a certain applied bit of pressure. So the essential skills will never change, but the difference in this area of the pathway is that it's the player's ability that they can perform the skill. And I said this last week, if anyone was tuned into the hurling one, that Jim Bob always says to any development group that we work with that, look, the 14-year-old or whatever doesn't perform the skill of, say, hand passing or the kicking like that much better than the 12-year-old, but the 14-year-old is just able to do it that bit quicker and that bit faster. And that's what you see when you move up the age grades, up our pathways, that the player's ability to do the skill is it's the quickness that they can do it, it's how fast they can do it, and that's going to become really prominent in this age group when they're under that bit of pressure. So your under 9s at this stage, they have performed and probably practiced most of the skills in isolation. So standing up, doing the skills, kind of doing it in partnerships, trying to get the skill right. But at the end of this, they should be comfortable performing the skills now whilst moving. So on the move, promoting this using both sides. And look, the real key word here is movement. Movement at this age grade is the biggest thing to let them go on to the under 11s, the under 13s, or whatever it is. And just a small thing then on the equipment needed. The boys have fairly touched it already, but just a quick one. Look, the importance of the right football is, it's massive. It's massive, and especially now at this age when they're playing a bit more games and they want to start kicking the ball over the bar. No good having a size 4 or 5 ball inside the bag and they're trying to kick it. It'll just deflate them. Confidence will go out of it. It could hurt them. It could hurt the goalkeeper that's inside the goals. So get the right footballs. Have plenty cones, plenty bibs. Use training poles as goals maybe to mark out the goals a bit better. And just have the right equipment. Be organised. So Noel, you can move it on there if you like. Yeah, that's lovely. So we've kind of been through the movements. The movements don't really change much from our nursery. We keep knuckling down them. We keep doing our fundamentals. Absolutely essential. The skills, as I said, the skills across the board don't really change. It's just the emphasis here is using both sides. And it's the movement process. The movement whilst performing the skills now is very, very important. Probably the big thing at this age group as well is that it's probably the first time the defensive side comes into it. So this is probably the start of where we start coaching the tackle. And we went through the tackle in a good lot of detail in a webinar there a few weeks ago, which is up on our coaching and game site. Might be good if you were a coach at this age grade now, introducing the tackle. There's loads of simple stuff that me and Peter done there the last few weeks, so that could come in very handy. The big one here, I talked about it already, our games program. The games is absolutely massive at this age grade. Giving players the chance to be able to get a feel of all the positions, very, very important. Don't keep the same person in goals, corner back all the time. Let them play. Give them a chance to experiment and be a chance to be forward, back and goalie. Rotate it around. As I said last week in the hurling, a pit hate for me is going in and watching, say, a club set up a match, and there could be, well, hopefully you'd have the numbers for 15, 20 are trying to be great with them numbers, obviously, but you see the 15 and 20 of them in the one game. Like, I think we're gone away from that now. It just takes being a small bit more organised to go away and set up another 2 or 3 fields, reduce the numbers. The players will get way more touches of the ball. Everyone will be more happy, and the development process will be far more beneficial. Yeah, look, to be honest, that's it. My big thing is the games. I'm sure Peter and the lads are going to touch on that more as we move up the ages. So I might actually hand you over to Peter now, and he'll take you through the under 11 that'll transition on from me now. So Peter, if you're there, you might take over, like good man.
Yeah, I'm on board there. Yeah. So we're moving on to under 11s now. Thanks for that, Gary. And again, look, we have to reiterate the point that there's going to be a lot of crossover between the two pathways, because we're looking at stages of development and applying different kind of movement patterns, a lot of the same movement patterns to kind of a different skill set. So the approach is very, very much the same for this age group, in the sense of we want all skills from under 6, under 8s and under 10s to be performed, but just the stimulus changes, and we look at how they're performing them on the move. We want to look at the use of both hands and both feet constantly, and that's all the way through from our nursery program all the way through to particularly this stage and on, because for me, what they do with the ball is the priority in our younger age groups. We can coach them to tackle, we can coach all these things when physicality becomes a huge kind of dictator to the pace of a game, or the quality of a game, or the setup and structure within a game. But in order for them to really, really be able to enjoy a game, to be able to take on points, it's really all about the quality of what they do with the ball. And in training sessions, we must give them opportunities to do everything we possibly can across the board. So we lay such a wide base around both movement and skill acquisition that when they come into these pressurized situations, that they can learn on the fly, because a lot of what they do physically is on autopilot. We get comfortable handling the ball, and ball handling is key and sometimes overlooked, that we're soft and we're relaxed, that when a ball comes to us low, high, or to the midriff, that small little things don't happen, like eyes closing, head turning away, or we stiffen up. We want to get comfortable handling the ball, and we're nice and relaxed, so that, again, we're building that confidence all the way through. But if we're in fear of a ball coming to us, we can never really enjoy exactly what we're at. Speed and running technique, all our fundamental movement skills, and we're looking to just lay the base for an increase in game understanding. Again, like I said, at this age, at 11s, game understanding is an introduction here. It's not the priority. What I will say is everything with the ball, and again, that fundamental movement base and building on all the work we've done in years previous is really the priority here, so that they can enjoy the situations they're being put into. It's important to remember again that fun is at the center of everything. They're beginning to learn to compete, and we're only introducing these kind of theories and principles to them. Learning to compete, again, is different to emphasizing the win. And if you want to see improvements in players, we must provide games opportunities for them at every single chance we get. We keep guiding them as human beings, exactly like the point made last week. We want to emphasize respect, fairness, honesty, humility, and discipline. And ultimately, if we can instill these in players and young people, instill these character traits in players and young people, it makes them more coachable going forward, that they want to learn and they want to improve, and that they understand that over time, if they apply themselves, they will learn and they will improve, and that will lead to reduced levels of dropout, all these things, and a positive environment in which for them to pump their energy into. And practice, individual practice, a ball in your hand, all marrying up to being comfortable handling the ball. Equipment needed, it's incredibly important, and we're transitioning from quick touch footballs to smart touch footballs now. And if we need to pare it back a little bit and stay with the quick touch football for the early part of our transition to under 11s, let's say we get a player at just turned 10 and they're used to using that quick touch football, if we need to stay with that at the start of the process, we absolutely can, and gradually introduce it. But we need to be always conscious of the equipment they're using. How does it impact their kicking technique? Because technique underpins everything, and technique changes when that pressure comes on, let's say an added weight of a heavier ball or a larger ball. And again, we as coaches, we're in control of that. So we have, once we have that eagle eye view, we have the opportunity to control that and change that for them, and for it not to become a stress, so they can fully focus on themselves and their improvement and their quality and their enjoyment of their time. Again, I mentioned tackle bags and skill development. There's an opportunity there for us to use it, not as the dreaded tackle bags that are pulled out in pre-season, but as a buffer to allow us to get comfortable around contact and understand the use of space, or our awareness of what's going on around us. Again, I make the point of a ball overhead. If you look up at the ceiling now, you'll take in a certain amount of information in front of you here that you only become conscious of when you become conscious of it being pointed out to you. We're so focused on the ball, we don't even realize that we take in far more information than we actually do. So just to fly on, we move on to the next slide and we look at our movement and our skills in our game. Now our game starts to open up a little bit, because more space is afforded to our players in moving towards under 11s and under 12s. They start to play in larger goals, and the game changes and the dynamic changes a small bit. Positions become, to a certain extent, more of a factor, and we're looking at, again, like I said, increasing game understanding. Priorities here would be, again, ball control in situations where I'm under pressure. How comfortable I am in the ball dictates my level of enjoyment. My level of enjoyment dictates the level of quality I'm bringing to what I'm doing, and my level of engagement. Again, if we want to talk about coaching, and particularly at this age, our priority within game is being able to understand the competition one-to-one, being able to battle for our own ball, win our own ball, and understand when to tackle and transition towards when do I pass, when do I shoot, when do I tackle, when do I do these things. Now, in all facets of the game, these three sections are incredibly dependent on the last. If we want to look at movement, and it's something that's often overlooked, if you want to build a sport-specific skill base, the wider and more solid our movement base is, the more receptive we are to sport-specific skill. So again, FMS and motor coordination must be a priority here if we want to really look at the quality of our sport-specific skill. Like I said, it dictates their ability to perform sport-specific skill across the board. And when we add those two together, a very, very wide and solid base of quality movement patterns and an understanding of how their body feels and moves, and marry that up with sport-specific skills across the board, the quality of our game then goes to another level altogether, and it allows them the opportunity, once they understand how to move and it becomes kind of autopilot, and their skills are at such a level where they're comfortable and in all styles of kicking, in all styles of handling, they get to really, really enjoy the game, and that's when the learning will start to happen. If the skill is constantly under pressure, the skill will always be the focus of the player. And anything we try to coach outside that then isn't going to be overly well received, or isn't going to be received to the level that we may want as coaches, because the player will prioritize the thing that they feel is most important at the time, because they're in the scenario and the situation themselves. I mentioned here, or we've mentioned that in the second slide, all kicking styles inside and outside of both feet, moving and under pressure. Now I want to broach this, and people will be saying, would you really be coaching them or encouraging them to kick with the outside of the foot? Because the inside of the foot is a more controlled pass, and we're looking for that controlled pass and to take the power off the strike so that it's easy for our partner to control. The way I look at that is, yes, I would be looking to coach the inside of the foot kicking all the time for that control and that very reason that's just been stated. But the outside of the boot kicking is, to a certain extent, a means of expression within the game, and it's absolutely unavoidable. Players are going to do it. You'll see it in the warm-up, and you'll see it all the way up to adult level. Players will go to the sideline, they'll look to angle that ball. Morris fits it outside of the boot over the bar, because it's a level of enjoyment. It's another skill. It looks stylish. So I don't feel that we should be looking to avoid these things. I feel that we should be looking for them to be performing them in the correct manner in certain correct situations when the time is right and they're not under pressure within game scenarios. If that's the way players are going to go, I don't think we should look to coach them out of doing these things too much. Because all the way through the pathway we're going to be coaching in and out of habits all the time in order to raise the quality of the skill at different stages. And another key point I want to really emphasize here is that maximizing the 4 steps, and this is directly dictated by what I've really stressed coming into this age group, is their quality and level of comfort on the ball. This is the bridge between the quality and level of comfort on the ball being maximized within game scenarios. If we can maximize that 4 steps, if we can turn that 4 steps into time where they're comfortable on the ball, they can bounce with their head up and scan and see what's going on, it's going to really, really impact the quality of what they do in a game and their decisions within it. So now we see that the 3 are really married up, and they're really, like I said, dependent again on each other. Quality of skill, maximizing our 4 steps, leads to really, really top quality decision making and enjoyment within games. As players experience game time, I can't stress that enough. If we want them to improve in game scenarios, we must provide games opportunities for them. And in my eyes, if that means losing a game to get game time into my players so that I can go to a coaching session with them the following Tuesday and have a coaching point based on a part of the game that arose for them that's relevant and individual to them, so be it. 100%. I'll take that. I'll take that coaching opportunity over any result any day. So we become helpful instruction. If we're not getting helpful instruction, we become, our back gets up a little bit. So this is our opportunity for feedback and instruction, and they're still really, really open to it, because they have that at 11 and 12. They have that wide-eyed wanting to improve. kind of mindset about them. And if they get comfortable taking instruction in the right way, that's helpful and positive and relevant, again, as they move on, it's going to make our jobs easier as coaches because we're dealing with more coachable players. So they're the key points I really wanted to emphasize at this age. Again, this age is bridging the gap. It's moving towards a transition from them going from primary school to secondary school. And in everything we do, we're looking to instill confidence in their ability and show them that their ability to a certain extent is limitless. How much time and effort they want to put in is going to dictate how much they improve, and they will get the constant support from us as coaches once they're constantly trying to engage and constantly looking to enjoy what they're doing. So I think I'm kind of set there to pass you on to Paul and James, and thanks for listening.
Thanks, Peter. I get Noel to move it down the road there. So yeah, guys, look, the lads have covered a huge amount of detail there and a lot of stuff, and what I'll try to do is maybe not go over some of the points the lads have covered so well, and maybe just speak a bit about the age grades now that they've changed, speak a bit about the stuff that affords us to do, and maybe try and raise a few valuable points that we might keep in mind, and I suppose then most importantly hand over to the main event at the end, which is Jim Bob. All right. So look, I suppose now the fact that to change the age grades, the one huge advantage I see is that they're coming out of under 11s now where it's non-competitive, and they get the chance to go to under 13s before they hit the fail age grades, and I think this is a really valuable thing that we can keep in mind going forward, that it's a chance for us, as Peter said very well there in the last section, equal game time and making sure all our players get games, and we've an extra age grade to try and do that with maybe not as much pressure as comes on when they hit the failure, so I suppose, look, it's just implementing the FMS and the ABCs here is really important. These kids now will be coming out of 5th and 6th class and heading into secondary school, and they'll be starting to sit down a lot more during the day, and they mightn't be as active, and maybe their habits as regards what they do when they get home and doing homework and keeping on the move mightn't be great, or they might fall into poor habits. So I suppose just keeping an emphasis on FMS and the ABCs and keeping these kids moving is very important. It also might be the first time we start introducing games-based coaching, and I suppose it's very important that we remember that maybe it's not to jump full bull straight into it, that it's still very important that we'll get these kids now at 11, 12 and that they need to have the groundings of the technical skills before we start introducing all these games-based approaches, because if we go straight into it, sessions and training will break down, and games will break down, and players will get frustrated, and maybe they don't enjoy it as much. So it's important to make sure that we give them the grounding in the technical side of things as much as we can before we go straight into games based. So look, as the lads said there, with the equipment and stuff, it stays fairly similar. I suppose one of the main things to note is this will be their first time coming into the big pitch and the big goals as well. So it's just important to keep that in mind, that it's a bigger area to be looking at, and it might take them a bit of time to adapt, but everything else kind of stays the same as we move up along. We're still on size 4 footballs, and I suppose quick touch and smart touch are excellent tools to use as well there. They're a bit more, they can come off the wall if we're doing wall sessions a bit quicker than normal football. We don't ruin them either, and it might be a bit easier to introduce them to before we hit to the real heavy O'Neill's footballs that maybe they haven't got the grounding in because of they've been playing the non-competitive stuff so far. So Noel, if we can just roll it down there. I suppose, as I said, guys, just on the movement side of things, just very important that we keep these kids moving and active, and it's not really a time to start introducing S&C. It's more to make sure that their base is good, and we can do some bodyweight stuff, sure, but S&C will come at a later age grade. I suppose, as we said, flexibility is hugely important. Mobility, stability, strength also equally as important, and technique focused bodyweight exercises give them a really good base for when they move down the road to the S&C side of things. From a skills point of view, as we said there, it's finding the balance between technique and speed is on top. I think that's a really good phrase, because that's really what we're looking at. Doing it a bit quicker, but making sure the technique is correct, and we can maybe introducing a small bit of pressure as we go along, but doing it in the correct way, not throwing them straight into it and trying to let them sink or swim, giving them the tools that they can use to properly go into the games-based side of things. So stuff like the use of the body here comes in. It's an excellent thing to start teaching kids. It's stuff that will last them for the rest of their lives, really, if they're well able to use it. Kicking on their own, both feet, inside and outside of the foot. A hand and fist passing off both hands is something I think is hugely important. These technical skills are an area we can really focus in on and give them a good grounding for going forward. I remember I had one of the lads in Bruff had a cousin who went to the AFL. And when they were injured, they used to make them do 1,000 hand passes left and right, if they couldn't run or couldn't use their feet. So, stuff like that, if these people in other sports are doing it like that, that kind of stuff is obviously very important. Being able to hand pass left and right is something that will get you out of a huge amount of trouble in matches. So, and it's no point letting it up to the kids to do it. Give them the chance to do it in training and set aside some practice time for skills. When it comes to the game, then, as we said, it might be their first time heading out onto the pitch. The big pitch, so giving them the chance to develop some game sense and not being too frustrated, if it takes them a bit of time, because it will, getting used to where they are in the field, getting used to the goals, getting used to all that kind of stuff is very important, and it's where they're learning to compete, and I suppose, especially at under 13s, as I said, it might be a time when they're starting to get ready into transition and getting a bit older, and it's important to realise that they're going through an awful lot in life at this stage with their transitions. So I suppose they don't need more stress of transitioning from another area when it comes to playing their games. That's where they come to have a bit of fun and relax. So it's just important to keep that in mind. But at the same time, when it comes to the game, a bit more physicality comes in, breaking the tackle, defensive play, and delay denied possess in the tackle as well. And I suppose working as a team, reading the game, and I suppose Peter mentioned earlier about kids when they're practicing and they're kicking the balls over the bar outside of their foot. So encouraging a bit of individuality in the team structures, and I suppose not taking it away from them really is the main thing. So now we might roll it down there to the 15s. And a lot of stuff will cross over here, and a lot of the points I've mentioned, lads, are very similar. So I suppose again, I will try not to go over too much that we've already heard, conscious of time. So the skills technique still has to be complemented here with your games-based approach. You cannot just leave your skills aside. You really need to keep focusing in on them, but we can start introducing games-based here, and a few more games and scenarios and sessions. And playing as a team and understanding your role, this is where they'll come into the first real competitive environment, I would say, anyway, or it should be anyway. Because as I said, we have a real good chance at that 13s age grade to keep developing our players a bit further. So stuff like size 5 footballs, that might seem like a small thing, but it's a big transition for a child to make into using a size 5 football. They won't be able to kick the ball as far. It might hurt a bit more to kick it and catch it, and hand passes won't be as good either. So just again, giving them the time to adapt to that, and even if they can do it at home, and if you have a couple of footballs that they can take home even, and use when they're not at the field, it'll be very important too. Just as we said earlier, the more we take the fear out of the ball, the better, really. So I suppose here the big thing is a better understanding for the game and their role. That's, I think, is a key point there. As we said, competitive environment now, and there's probably less time for them to be. It's important that they understand their roles quickly. I suppose if I can get that across in the right way. Not doing a great job of it, but this is a competitive environment, and they're going to come under a bit more pressure, regardless of how much you try and relax it off them. I suppose they know what the fail is. There's no point saying any otherwise, and they know how important this age grade is, but I think if we can keep them going up to this age grade at 15s, I think we'll hold on to them for a lot longer down the road. So not to forget, I suppose, stuff like equal game time as well, and making sure all our kids are getting the chance to improve is very important. So we might roll it down there, Noel. Yeah, so guys, so on the movement side of things here now, this is where S&C might start to be introduced again, and same as games based, not to go full bull into it, and obviously with the guidance of a qualified S&C coach as well is very important, but body weight exercises are your real friend here, really, to be honest, at this age grade again, and it may be slightly introducing some weight in some exercises, but again, we'll defer to the expertise there, and we'll try and use those people as best we can in our clubs. So I suppose making sure they stay active and stay movement, that all their skills from the FMS side of things and the ABCs are still worked on. When it comes to skills in the game, obviously decision making here and stuff like that, it needs to come under a bit of stress when it comes to sessions, you know, and introducing some decisions and I suppose pressure scenarios and stuff. And I suppose just making sure that we can make sure their skills stand up to the pressure they'll come under a game, so that our kids can enjoy them as best as possible, really. Ball control here, and I suppose just getting the head up, and accuracy and precision there are two words that are used. They're excellent words, really. If we can focus in on them, we'll be doing a very, very good job. And again, freestyle skills come up. As we said earlier, important not to take away that bit of individuality, really, from their players. When it comes to the game, then I suppose just understanding principles in the game, you know, tactical principles might start coming in here, you know, and it's just important that I suppose that we don't just hope they'll do them in matches when we say it to them beforehand, that we hope that we can give them the groundings in sessions and work on them and give it the time, you know, to, again, as I said, to make sure that they're in the best position possible to perform in games, and that no one gets frustrated, both managers and players, you know. So stuff like support play, third man runners, backdoor cuts, all those kind of things to be built into sessions, you know. And you can build them in yourself as a coach without really explaining what they are to the kids. They'll start doing them without even knowing what they're doing. But at the same time, you know what it is and you can see it happening. But the kids, all the kids know is they might be losing a marker and making a really good run and putting a ball over the top and stuff like that, you know. So you can introduce them to the sessions without really going into a whole pile of detail and really bogging down the children. So it's just important to remember that. And I suppose being comfortable in possession here is one of the main things I see there is really, really important. And as I said, that comes from training and building in the bit of the game's approach into training, which will stand them down the line. I know James is going to speak a bit more there, and he'll have a few gems for us down in the next section as well. So I'll hand over to James there just to finish us off there.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. No, we'll just leave that up there 1 minute, that the slide's up there. Just the under 16 one, yeah. I'm just going to leave that one up there. Hello, everyone. Good to see so many on it and all that. Just on the movement thing, I suppose what we're here tonight to talk about is the book and launching the book and all that. And as I'm talking to you here, I actually have the book here in front of me. And I would recommend that it is something to have in the car or even out in the field or whatever, and be jotting things down, or even just to give a read through of the age that you're with, and you would pick up a few good ideas. It's just something I'll be doing myself. I just put this one up here, and the 18s are going to do the same on the movement side of it. But it said here about learning different disciplines like juggling and handstands, and the lads have talked about it there. And the first thing I thought about was our coaching environment. And in fairness to a lot of lads, they've made a great point about using both feet. But anyone who's a coach now with under 15 or under 17 knows that this pathway wasn't there before. We don't know what coaching they got previous. Has it been done? And why I'm on about coaching environment, the lads said that hurling and football, they've very similar movements and they're very similar this and that. And you can agree or disagree with that, but our coaching environment isn't the same. And what I mean by that is, if I take an under 13 or 15 hurling session this year, I will automatically, just by my environment, say, right, lads, get onto the other side, use both sides, strike off your left, strike off your right. But I don't know, am I fully in that mind frame of saying that in football? Get on your left leg, get on your right leg, sole off both feet. So when it says learning different disciplines there on a movement side of it, I would definitely be saying the more you can incorporate using both feet, using both hands in your session. And I only know from playing myself, and a lot of lads will be the same, and being coaching every day, that it's never too late to start practicing both sides. I know a lot of lads don't have it. And the last thing I want to say on the movement side of it, and the reason why I left this slide up for the movement, is obviously 13 would be as well, and a lot of the professionals that come in would be, but definitely at 15 now, when we talk about COVID and the lockdown and lads doing absolutely nothing, and I've had a good parents on to me, I can't get him out, he's on the PlayStation, he's become good at Fortnite, all this kind of crap. More than likely we're going to get him back, and they've been very, very, like, not much movement going on in the last year even, so you have to be very careful. And I will be promoting just doing a little bit of a longer warm-up with these lads, because you don't want them getting injured. Like jumping, explosive power stuff, all that is just jump, take a couple of strides away. But the mobility, durability and sustainability, it's just about injury free there. It's injury prevention, just doing a longer warm-up. The other reason why I left this slide up there is if you look at skills down there, tackling technique and how to use your body, and judging and timing of skills. Like, it does conflict itself big time. We'll be talking a lot about drills and in game based and giving games as much as you can. The reason why I stopped it up there was just to give a good example that if you're showing tackling technique and you're trying to show a group of people it, like if Paul Kinnock is inside the Limerick hurling team, or if who Billy Lee is inside the footballers, for example, and they're trying to show tackling technique, they can show video analysis. They have all this at their disposal. We don't, right? So the point I'm trying to make is often when you're a trainer, you're trying to show something at this age that's kind of complex enough. It is a good time to do a 1v1 at goal or 2v2 on goal and have a few lads standing up and be questioning them while it's going on so they can see what you're trying to explain to them and they have a picture of practice what's going on. Ball control and head up immediately there. I heard Peter saying it, and I think as coaches, we always make this mistake as we get older about not enforcing the key points about taking your 4 steps with the ball. How important is ball control and head up immediately? If you're taking your 4 steps, you've time to get your head up and see what's on. The other reason I left this on is game. If you look at game, they'll work on and off the ball and how it can affect the game, right? This is where it gets complicated, and this is where you see massive gaps. Anyone who's training 15, 16s and start shaking their head, go, you're dead right here. Some players will get it and some players won't. They'll just get it like it's just natural, whatever. This is what the hardest job it is for us as coaches. It's about, I suppose, being good at observing and seeing the lads that aren't getting it. And you'll be surprised a word in a fella's ear here and there and a good piece of advice, how it can change his game and things like that. Just the last point in this age, I suppose, is understanding your role and the roles of your teammates. And I suppose you're trying to get teams together and try and sort out where their best positions and all that. And at this age, it can be very kind of awkward and stuff like that. But when you're changing a lad from backs to midfield or to the forwards or whatever, number one, he's thinking, why is he moving me into all that? And number two, he mightn't be getting any advice. It's just to be conscious when you're changing a fella into position, to give him a couple of points about how to play there, and it might just give him that confidence of playing that position. And the last one on that is just reading all aspects of play, interceptions and things like that. I like that line at this age because to me, that's just at 15 years of age or 40, 15 years of age, how long can a player stay focused or stay engaged in that play until the ball goes out wide or out for a side or whatever? And the more you can keep players engaged in the moments, the better it is. So, Noel, if you just move on to the next one there, please. Down to the movement, skills, and game side of it. So, lads, I won't keep you long. Conscious that we're kind of gone a bit over time here as it is, right? Just on the skills part there, it says fine-tuning all skills, looking to make improvements in areas and honing areas of strength, right? Just one point on that was, myself and Ollie's retired now from GAELIC, we couldn't get over. We were with the under-17 Limerick squad 2 years ago now, and we were in, and we just, after a session or two, we were watching them, and we couldn't get over how poor their technique was of completing the crouch lift and ball handling. And what I mean by ball handling was a bouncing ball coming towards them, maybe below the waist or whatever, or even a chest high, and they moving towards the ball, and they're not able to handle it properly. I know the lads run about being comfortable in possession and the whole lot, and I'm not blaming the academy or anything like that. It's just at 17, I would have considered them two skills that you think they'd have off. But then again, if you go watch the senior football championship in Limerick or the intermediate football championship, you will see that the crouch lift is probably the most missed skill in the game. So again, it comes back to the movement thing about the knee and the hip and bending down, and you can see it all down there by the side. But what we done to improve that is we incorporated it into our warm-up. Every time we're doing our warm-up, obviously we've got the mobility and the stretching and all that going on. And at the end of it, we just done a bit of ball handling, crouch lift the ball, run on, crouch lift the ball, and then throw the ball at him, next fella running out. And I can't say, and I'd be very biased, that it improved them as the year went on. But if you don't hone in on them skills and don't try and develop them, well, then they're not going to get any better. The last thing, and I've mentioned it already, is the coaching skills in situations where use of body is also needed. Like, this takes an awful lot of observation is the key for this, and this is why we'd be promoting doing foundation course in Ward 1, because just on coaching eye and the observing, like a couple of examples there is the overhead catch. Like, how many times have we been in a match and you've been with a team and your midfielder is getting outplayed in the air every time, and all you have to say to him is, if you just stand in front of him or stand to the side of him or just stand at the other side of him and use your shoulder, how you can stop a player. But that's what coaching is, but it has to have the observation, the coaching eye, to see that. the 1 minute now. The next thing was the game. Oh yeah, the game is the manager. I like this one. If you go over the game is the manager, teacher, physical coach, and the psychologist. What I like about that is, like, when you get to this age, the coach is trying to be everything to everyone, and it's a very hard thing to do. And I suppose what that line means is, often while the game is going on, that can be where they're learning the most, and that is where the coach can often pull a player aside and give him a little bit of a word and put him back into the game, kind of using the coach 10 model. And it's a great use and a great line that often we try and overcomplicate things. Put them into the game and see how they get on. Technical prowess, another story about the minors, understanding styles of play and kind of tactics and that. Again, the same era with the Limerick minor team, we just tried something very simple. Well, we thought it was simple. We tried to name a fellow up corner forward and play him out the field, so play 2 inside. And the reason I'm saying this is at 17, with tactics and all this, is they found it very, very hard to understand. And you might say, maybe you just want to explain it right, or whatever the case may be. But we just thought it was such a simple thing about playing the sweeper. But like, looking back, did we explain to the sweeper how to play the position, know where to go, how to read the game, what other players should be doing? We tried our best, but we ended up just going back to 15-15 and bringing players back and making it easy. But just if you are doing different styles of playing that, just remember that they are 17 and they find it very, very hard to kind of pick up stuff, and it has to be explained an awful lot. And I suppose that comes to my second last point about encourage players to take ownership on reflection and just asking questions. They're 16, 17 years of age at this stage. Personally, I think you can do it even with the last school 14, 15-year-olds, but communication is key, and asking them questions. They know a lot more than you think. Often when you throw the question back at them, so the question that's down here is, how could I have positively impacted that game or situation? You can easily just change that to, lads, is there anything that anyone could have done there to get the ball up the field quicker? And you'll be surprised what they come back with. And often, as anyone who's got this age knows, players will often listen to other players better than they listen to you. So it's just a player-led approach. That's kind of it, lads, to be honest. I know we're over time. Again, this is just a promotion, I suppose, a launch of the player pathway. But for me personally, I will be using this book. I'll have it in the car. I just think if you're at a certain age and you give it a quick look, you will come up with a few key ideas or maybe drills and skills if you weren't prepared for the session, which often you can be caught at work or something, and that can happen. The last point I'm going to make about it is that if anybody was on it, and I made the point last week about, like, oh, I might pick up a skill or a drill there, and Noel will be telling you maybe a bit about it later. It's all on learning.ga.ie. You can go into a certain age group, you can go into a certain skill that have games, all that kind of stuff in it. This was just basically kind of something to be working off in a kind of a technical kind of way and adding skills and games to it. So, look, thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope it was some bit beneficial, and if there's any questions there, me or the lads might answer them for you.
Good man, James. Thanks for that, and thanks to Gary, Peter, Paul, and David as well for the presentation there earlier on. As James was saying, that there is copies of this, so we will be forwarding this out with just a small little few updates to make because of the slightly change in the ages. But the thing is that it's a guide that we hope that we can use. That there is lots of information in it, but we feel that by following this, it's just giving coaches. We're mad, and David mentioned at the very, very start, we want to get coaches involved. We want to show them what to do as well. They want to know what to do, so they can either have some booklet to follow or they can attend a coaching course. But it's important that the coach knows what to do as well as players enjoying what has to be done. We have to enjoy what we're doing as well with them, because if we bring that enthusiasm into the sessions, it certainly will reflect off on the players as well. So we have time for a few questions. If you have any questions, you can throw them into the chat box there, and we can answer them out there a few in the next few minutes. just as we're waiting for one or two questions to come in, James mentioned learning.ga.ie, but there was a program launched yesterday evening, Be Ready to Play, and you can see there's some details in on that. So if you go into learn.ga.ie, so if you go into the homepage there, let's go back one. So you come into this, so you're going to learn.ga.ie. Here comes your planner, so that's where your different sessions. You can click in on the planner there, and when that opens up, you've all the different drills in along here. So if you're clicking the football section there, different games, click on the different age groups along here. You've got the different skills. So if you look at the gaining possession from move that over to the football one there. Sorry. So if you look at gaining possession in football, the skills are the lifting and the catching, so we gain possession. But following on from that, then on this page as well is this ready to play program that they launched last night. So again, I would it's geared towards as you can see, youth players, youth coaches, adults, and advanced. It's certainly worth logging into it, registering your interest, because there will be some coaching webinars and workshops and drills and practices that can be practiced with your players throughout the year. So you can go in there. There's something there in the registration guide. I will forward out some stuff to clubs. I will put some registration details up onto our Twitter and our Facebook accounts as well. And then down here, just the GAELIC 15 warm up again, which is good to look into for with your role of players. So yes, I certainly would recommend logging into that. I think there's a question in there if one of the lads wants to take that.
Yeah, I can jump in there on that. Yeah, we could potentially look into measures and stuff like that might help reduce the impact for players. But us as coaches, and in the scenario and the setting we're in tonight, all I can say is that there are certain things that are going to be outside our control. And exactly what Paul was alluding to earlier, in the sense that that transition from a smaller pitch to a larger pitch must happen at some stages. Now, of course, it's up for debate whether it's acceptable or suitable for it to be a 13 and a full pitch and size goals and numbers. And look, there are questions we do ask ourselves inside our own coaching and games. But the one thing that I can say from a coaching point of view here is that we must reframe certain things that happen as a result of these things. So if you have someone that is not the biggest in stature like me in goals, let's say, when I was 12 or 13, and a ball lobs in over my head and I timed my jump right, my hands were fully extended out over my head, and there was just that gap between the crossbar and my hands that it was completely out of my control. The disappointment is still there because I conceded it at that age, and I probably may not understand that. Look, there isn't a whole pile I can do to that, and games are won and lost in the difference between the width of the crossbar at all ages. So just as coaches ourselves, if we can manage those situations and reframe them as best we possibly can, there's learning outcomes to be taken from that. To the point where we will sometimes benefit from that, in the sense that a ball will drop in over a goalkeeper's head and one of our players going for a point, and we win the game by 2 points. Or it can just drop in underneath the crossbar and we can lose the game by 2 points. But if the game situation, the scenario, and reframing things that happen within games that may not have been to our benefit are always at the centre of what we do, I think that, look, everything there is an opportunity for us to learn. That maybe potentially doesn't fully answer your question, but like I said, we can only control what we control for the time being, and yes, I could say that potentially we may be looking at something along those lines, but I just can't guarantee it at this point in time, because I'm just speaking on the fly here, to be honest.
Yeah, Noel,
that question there, to be fair, Marcus, that's probably Borden will be running those underage games. I know in some counties that they are. It depends on the division that you're in. I know in some counties they're playing smaller size goals for the lower age groups, but and then in Division 1, they're playing full pitches as well. So look, we will probably have to bring that to board now, because they're looking after that fixtures program.
Yeah, Noel, can you hear me there, Noel? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dennis has a question up there, maybe from under 15 up, intro of rest and recovery practice, etc., due to demands on player and other sports, schools, etc. Again, Dennis, I suppose I'm going to be a bit like Peter. I won't be able to answer this question, but it is actually on the under 15 movement thing down at the bottom. It has rest, recovery, nutrition. But like, this is a player pathway, I suppose, in GA is the best way of answering this. And I do know from obviously the job we're in, and a lot of us do know from playing other sports, growing up ourselves, the demands on players and other sports and that. And to be honest, it's more of an individual problem than anything else. Like I'm out here in the south, and obviously soccer is played, and it's played by popular. Rugby, there's only 2 clubs around us. It's not as popular. Inside in the city, it's a totally different situation. I know players are doing an awful lot of different things now from 13 on. There's so many different avenues they can go down: gymnastic, athletics, every kind of a thing. And it was very hard to get that right in this pathway, and you can't allow for other sports and that. But again, it's something that it's maybe a coach, parent, and player, and it's a very individual thing about their weekly thing. And that's why we put it into our pathway about the rest, recovery, and nutrition at that age, because we understand the importance of it, but it's very hard to gauge what a certain individual is doing at that age. So I'm not answering your question. We understand that it's a massive problem. And again, just I suppose on a personal thing to answer it, is an awful lot of young lads, unfortunately, at that age of 13, 14, 15, are having to pick a certain sport, or even cut out certain things that they enjoy to improve. And it's the elitist nature of the way it's going. But look, definitely rest, recovery, and nutrition is a massive thing. But again, it's more of an individual thing than I suppose a group or a coaching thing, if that makes sense, and also a localized thing.
Look, I suppose we'll leave that there for this evening. There's probably a few interesting points there about the goal size that we'll take to a different form, if you don't mind. As Peter pointed out, we're probably more looking from the coaching side of it, and the games we would look after would be only up as far as under 11. So we certainly bring forward those concerns to the relevant body. Just want to thank all you guys for coming on. These are very hopefully you're finding very, very worthwhile. As I said last week, we're only mad looking to get out into the pitch to do some coaching. With the fact that schools are back next week now, probably hopefully we'll be a bit of light at the tunnel for us to get our coaching going again. The people that have registered for the webinars, I will be sending out the recordings and the actual booklets to you, and I will forward them out to clubs. I just want to adjust some of the ages on them. I know having last week's gone out as well, and same with the coaching conference. We just get to a couple more, do a bit of work on the recordings, didn't come out as clear as we would have liked. So there's a bit of work to be done on that again. So listen, lads, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Hope you're, as I say, keeping safe and minding yourselves, pumping up them footballs, dusting down them cones, cleaning them bibs, having them in the booth, and getting the car really pointed towards the pitch. Because with all going well, we will be there soon. So thanks again to the lads this evening. Thanks to Peter and Paul and James. Sounds like they're the three evangelists. And then David, Gary, and myself done as well for doing that. So we look forward to seeing you soon. And thanks very much, lads. Take care.